Hi my crafty creatures, thank you for tuning into this video. In this video I wanted to show you how I made this jewelry tray, and the reason I wanted to make this jewelry tray is because I have a lot of small pieces of jewelry, mainly studs, which is what I tend to like to wear, and I wanted a place to put it, but I didn't want like a full jewelry box that you buy online that have all the different compartments for rings and stuff like that, because I don't wear rings and I only have a handful of necklaces. So I just wanted a place where I could throw the ones that I wear the most often and just have like a little place that I can put it. And then as I get more jewelry, I can add to it, because this was relatively easy to make. So if you want to see what I did to make these jewelry trays, please stay tuned to the video. As with any wood project, you'll want to start off by measuring, and I did run into a little bit of an issue because the shelf that I wanted to put this on wasn't quite long enough. So just make sure that you're measuring where you want to put it, as well as the length of this. But here I'm just marking at the halfway point, and that's where I ended up cutting. So that ended up being 12 inches. Since I'm using a bit of a soft wood, I'm going to use the handsaw and a miter box to cut the angles and everything that I need, which I'm just using a 90-degree angle. I'm not doing any like 45 or anything like that. So it made it relatively easy. So I'm just taking the saw and sawing through all the way. Now that I have my two bases cut, I'm going to move to the sides. And for this, I'm just measuring out the length of each of the longer sides. And then I'm going to measure out the length of each of the shorter sides. And I'm going to do that one by one because I want to make sure that it's completely even on each side. As you can notice here, I have these black pegs, and these are going to be used to hold the wood in place while I cut. And then that just makes it easier so that I don't have to try to hold the wood in place and cut as well. Now that I have the pieces cut, I'm just going to clean up the edges and the sides just so that it's smooth and makes it easier when I get to my final glue up. Now I'm just taking the longer pieces and running a line of glue on the side of it, and then I'm just going to place it into place and then sit something heavy on it to let it dry for about 20 minutes until I can go and put in the smaller pieces on the other side. To glue up the shorter sides, I made sure I put glue on 3 of the sides of it and then slid it into place, and then I put my laptop back on top of it to weigh it down to hold it in place while it dries. For the divider pieces, I ended up using an X-Acto knife to cut these because they were a little too small to use the miter box. So I used the X-Acto knife, but at first I made sure I marked on all 4 sides of it so that I could get as even as a cut as possible. And I just took the X-Acto knife and slowly cut through each one of the pieces until I got the length I needed. So when I did a dry fit of the dividers, I noticed that I didn't like how low these were sitting, so I just added another piece to it, and then I just made them a little bit bigger. So I did the vertical ones with 2, and then the horizontal ones were just 1. So I forgot to record on how I did this, but to create these right angles, I just used the guide on my mat, and then I cut using my X-Acto knife. And now I'm just going to take a little bead of super glue and glue these angles together since they're so small. I didn't want to use the wood glue. Here you'll see that I'm using my ruler to find the halfway point, and I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and score a little line that goes all the way across, and I'll just use this as a guide to lay my center pieces. While the horizontal piece sets, I'm going to take a vertical piece and dry fit it just to make sure that I'm comfortable where it sits. And then I'm going to add some glue onto it and then glue it into place. Once that dries, I'm going to keep on moving on until I get to the final divider. Here you'll see that I'm just using one of the edge pieces just to draw a guideline of where I want to place those angle pieces that I cut earlier. And this is just so that I make sure that they fit within the frames so that they don't slide around when you stack the trays. Now I'm just taking some of the super glue and adding it to the bottom and then gluing them into place. Now I'm going to do this for both trays, and I'm going to have them at each of the 4 corners. Now that I have everything glued up and has had time to dry, I'm going to add the stain. And I'm using the same stain that I've used in all my other things. It's the Puritan stain by Mid Blacks. And I'm just taking the paintbrush and getting every side and crevice that I possibly can. And then I'll let that dry. I ended up letting that dry for about 2 days before I could get back to it. So I think I could have gone with a second coat, but I didn't want it to be too dark. After adding on my protective coating, this is what the final trays look like. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.